everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 24 of the new Build Your Stash and Craft. Today we are going to play with those old credit cards that are like just the fake credit cards that you get in the mail, like your rewards cards that you don't use anymore, old gift cards, old hotel keys, that you have laying around. And if you don't have these, you can use cardboard in place of them. It's not going to work or be as sturdy as these. It won't work as well, but if you want to play along and you don't have any. But whenever you get these in the mail, Papa used to, like, when he'd get something in the mail, the first thing he would do is take it off and try and rip it. And he's like, oh, it's a good one. He'd give it to me because a lot of them now are cardboard with like a plastic coating. So, but I was requested to do something with these because one of you had a bunch of them, and I do too. I have 2 really big stacks of them. And so I'm going to show you some of the things that I do with them. So we'll start with just the really plain, simple, easy ones. You may have seen these things before, you may not have, but they're really fun to do. So I'm going to move this back just a little bit. One of the first ones is they make, obviously, great paint spreaders. And so, I don't know why I turned that paper. So I just have a piece of our white paper here, and I'm going to take 2 colors that will go together. So we'll do yellow and green. And then we're just going to put some paint on our paper about the width of our credit card. So I'm just going to do dots, and I'm going to kind of leave a space. Well, I guess these are turning out to be more of a dash than a dot. Whoops, didn't get any on there. Come on out. And they don't need to be great big. Like, those are actually bigger than they need to be, but that's okay. They'll just go farther. And then I'm going to put a color that matches between. And the only thing is you want your dots of paint to touch each other. I'll make one not touch. Okay. So this one doesn't touch. We don't want to do that because what it's going to do is it's going to leave a gap. So if that happens, oh, I just had a toothpick here. What did I do with it? Oh, well. I'll just use the edge of this credit card. If that happens, all you want to do is just move your paint to touch each other, just so that you have a solid line. But this is a really easy way to make a really quick background. So you just put your paint across there. It doesn't have to be dots. It could be half and half. It could be a third, a third, a third, or it could be all one color. But then you just take your credit card, put it at the edge, and then you're going to just kind of swirl it back and forth. And it's just going to give you a really cool background. Now, when you get to the bottom of the paper, you're still going to have some left, depending on how much you put on there. So then just go ahead and do some more. And the further you get, the more your paint runs out, the more you're going to lay your card down. Okay, so I am going to grab another one. So I'm just going to grab another one, and I'm going to take this paint, and I'm just going to wipe it off. So that and you can scrape it off. The other nice thing about this is that it dries because you don't put it on really thick. When you scrape it like this, it goes really far, and it dries really quick when you're doing this scraping motion. Now the others, because your paint's a little bit thicker, especially on the edges, it will take a little bit of time to dry. And if you do not like that edge of dark paint on there, make sure that you wipe your card off, because this is pretty much dry because it goes on so thin. But if you want to get that off of there, then just go ahead and go in and kind of follow your lines to kind of help remove that. But you want your card to be clean so that you're not smearing paint from your card onto whatever pattern you just made. And then I'll just take that little bit, and let's do this one because I want to kind of tell you as I'm doing this. All right, I'm going to now take this one off. And there's hardly any there, so I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. All right, so I want to show you this. We've got this little tiny bit of paint right there. We've got this much paper. Let's see how much we can do with just that little bit of paint. And that's about it. So we didn't quite get that whole bit, but that's an awful lot of paper for that little tiny bulb of paint. So just remember that it really helps it to go a long ways, but don't just wipe it on a paper towel. Just have a wipe-off sheet next to you that you can get rid of it with, because that would be a lot of paint to waste if I just wiped it off when I was done making my pattern. When you're making your pattern, as you start, I kind of forgot to tell you that you don't need to hold it down real far because that paint is all right there. So as you start, you just kind of hold it at barely an angle and just go ahead and go. And the further down you get, then the more you kind of lay it down just a little bit. You know, you don't have to lay it down a whole lot. And then take whatever you've got left over and wipe it off on another sheet. But that makes a really quick background you can use for cards, for journals, for tags, for the background of an art piece. It's just a really fun way to do it. So that's one easy way to do it. The next way is to use it to make patterns. So you can, we're going to actually make our own. And again, I'm going to cheat and use my own scissors because I forgot to bring the others out. I really do still have them. They're just hanging in the other room. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go in about every 1/4 of an inch, and I do not measure, but you can if you want to. I'm just going to make a slice in the card until I get all the way to the other end. I'm probably making it about 1/4 of an inch tall. Okay, I've got a little bit at the end here, and I'm going to cut that off. Okay, because you got to start somewhere. I'm going to leave this first one then. I don't know if you can see how that's cut. So we'll leave one, and then we'll just bend the next one over. Leave one, bend the next one over. Whoop, leave one, bend one, until we get all the way to the other end. And then we're just going to cut them off. Now, if you have a jelly plate, these work really good to make marks on your jelly plate. You know, you don't want to cut into your jelly plate, so you want to be light-handed on there, but they work really well for that. And then I'm going to cut them off, and when I cut them off, there's going to be, because I'm not trying to get super close to where the fold was. So see, there is still a little fold there. I just kind of fold them back down so that they're a little pokey if they're sticking out. So you can just fold them back down. And you can see how far I cut up, probably a little bit farther up than they are wide. And then just fold them back down so that they don't poke you or get in your way. Because you don't need them to be that tall. I cut them that tall so that I don't have to worry about trying to get way up in there, trying to cut it way up in there and cut from there to there and stop by the time I get to the other one, and then make sure it comes off. Just fold it, nip across, and then fold them back down again. You've got plenty of space for your paint to not be spread by these all the way up here. I want to tell you something. Excuse me. The first time I made some of these, I made some like this. And I made some wider. That worked out really well. I made some skinnier. That worked out really well, just square like this. Then I made some that kind of were curved. I made some that were pointy. Whatever the width of this is that's going to touch your paper, that's what's going to make a mark. So if you make a curve, it's not going to make a curved mark. If you make it pointy, it's just going to basically put a little scratch in your paper, in your color or whatever. If you make it rounded like that, it's just going to make only where the bump comes out. That's going to touch the paper. So it's going to make it just like a wide square one. So you don't if you make all these fancy different things, they don't help you any as far as spreading paint goes. So just if you want them wider, then cut them wider. If you want them smaller, cut them smaller, but doing them just like this is totally fine. I spent a lot of time doing it, and then when I started spreading my paint, I went, oh, well, like, it doesn't look any different with the rounded one or the pointy one than it did with this, except for the size of what touched the paper. So you can do like this, and then just take your paper and take your color. And so you can like you could make a rainbow. I'm going to put a little dot on the end of each one of these. Again, just for a quick paint method. And then I'm just going to take those, hold them at just a touch of an angle. And of course, I'm doing this swirly bit here, but you don't have to. Now, when you do it this way, your paint runs out quicker. And I really lost a lot of my paint here. I don't know that I can get it back, but I'm going to try. So I'm just going to kind of put this on here and kind of scrape it and scoop it. So you can make patterns like that. And then you could even go in with another color and go the opposite way to make kind of like a crosshatch or a plaid or whatever you want to call it. Now I have a ton of paint here. Whoops, and then I dripped on my paper and hardly any here, so I'm just going to move some of that over. I'm going to take that off. So then you can just and I'm going to pick this up. And because when you scrape it like this, it goes on fast and it goes on kind of dry, you can kind of see through it too. So if you've got something underneath that you want to see it, you put on a little bit and then use it, just put a little on here, use it to scrape across and see how you can see through it. So that's another way. You can do it like this where it's more solid, or you can cut it like this and make it so that it's more lines. And again, all of these, these are just like, instead of using a paintbrush and trying to do each one of these, this is just really quick. It's just a quick way to do something, and it's fun. It's fun to play with and to see what happens. I found my toothpick right there. It just poked me. It was in my paper towel. So we can make a spreader that we can make a dimensional spreader. We can use it as a flat spreader, and then we can also, I'm going to take this one because I could use this side as a flat spreader, and I can use this side as my dimensional spreader because I'm one short. So we're going to use this one, and we're going to make a tear ruler out of it. Just literally start at the bottom and just nick it. Just go in and come out. They don't need to be exactly the same. It's a little bit messy because your little bits kind of fly. Well, it's messy when I do it because I let them fly. But just go ahead and just put a bunch of nicks in it. And don't worry about them being the same size or the same depth. Because when you tear something, it's never exactly perfect. Now, if you want to make a tear ruler that is more perfect, you can do that also. And the thing is, remember how I told you about making the curvy one? And how that didn't make any difference on how the paint spread? But you can make a curvy one as a tear ruler. And with that, you would want to, well, you don't have to, but sometimes with something like that where you want it to be kind of perfect, then you wet your paper just a little bit with a paintbrush before you tear it. So there we go. We've got that. And this one, I don't like how it sticks out so far. It's too big of a bump right there, and I don't like it. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to put a nick in the middle of that bump. There. And now, to me, I just like it better. All right, so we'll really quickly do the other side too, and we'll just do a curvy one. And now these are not super long, but you know, if you're not doing something that is, you know, you don't always want to tear a full 8.5 by 11, but they're not that much harder to use than if you were trying to tear an 8. If you want to tear an 8.5 by 11, it's not that hard. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we'll just grab a piece of paper. I think I'll let that dry. Well, no, let's tear that one because it's easier to see if you've got a little color behind it. And I'm going to tear it over here because I want to kind of keep that because I really like the way that turned out, so I will definitely use that for something. And so here, we do have an 8.5 by 11, so we're just going to hold it on there. Whenever you use a tear roller, whether it's store-bought or your own made, just pull at an angle towards the ruler when you're trying to tear, and you get your best tear that way. And the thing is with this, we made a tear ruler out of acetate, I think, and we made our own tear ruler out of a thin ruler. But this works really well because these are so heavy that you don't have to hold them down with anything. And I kind of like them because they're easier to move. But there we go. Now we have, let's see if we can hold it up against here. I don't know if you can see that nice tear or not, but it is a really nice tear, and yet it's as straight as you want it to be. And it's very easy to move it along your paper. Now let's do the bottom. And we'll do the bottom with the rounded side. And I'm going to do I have a paintbrush? Okay. I use one of my regular paintbrushes, but we do have paintbrushes in the in our stash already, so you'll just use one of your. I usually just don't use anything from that we haven't actually bought for this, but I'm really trying to. Well, today is Saturday, and this is going to come up on. You're going to see it on Tuesday. So I'm a little further ahead than I was last week. Okay, so just wet your paper before you, and I'm doing this kind of backwards for myself. Just wet your paper along the edge, and then when you tear it, the paper will tear a little easier. And it also kind of gets a little bit of a raggedy edge to it, which I really like. And then you're kind of moving it on an angle, and you're kind of following those little swoops. You're not just trying to tear straight because you're not going to get the effect if you just try and, I'm going to tear it off down here, if you just try and tear straight. But there we go. So now we've got the little, those little things there, and that looks really pretty. And you can do it dry. It's just not quite as easy. But the thing about doing it dry is it's also not quite as shaggy. Hold on just a minute, and we'll finish this up, and I'll kind of show you the two next to each other. When you do it wet, it gets a more frayed, a little bit more frayed. And this is frayed, but this is just it's just a little bit more frayed than this one is. So, so that's not, I like the more frayed, and that's another reason I like to wet it, but I also find it easier to rip. So, you can make a tear ruler with them. You can make a paint spreader with them. You can make a paint tool with them to make different types of designs on your paper. And then, just finally, and the thing is, the sky's the limit. If you just think about what other things you could do, I'm sure that you'll think of lots of things. So you can also take them and make them into a little book. Now, before I even punch it, I'm going to sand it. Because these are shiny, things are not going to want to stick to them. Your glue won't stick to them very well. It may stick right away, but it might start peeling off. So I shouldn't have used these two because they actually do have the raised part on them, but that doesn't make any difference. It will give some texture to your book cover, but you can use them for book covers. And because I want to glue some paper on it, I'm just going to rough that shininess up so that my glue will kind of have something to grab onto. And when you do this, you don't have to like scrape off all of the color, or you're not going to really scrape off the bumpy parts of it, but you just definitely want to have it be rough everywhere. And I kind of like to go in different directions because I just think that helps. Whether it really does, I don't know. It's what I think, so it's what I do. So there we go. We've got that one roughed up, and let's get this one. And I probably should really do the inside too so that I could cover the inside, but I'm not going to, just for sake of time. But if you want to put paper on the inside and the outside, if this is too shaky, I apologize, then make sure that you do both sides. And I could have done one side before I came out here, but I didn't think about that. Okay, so, alrighty. And then you're just going to want to wipe it off good so that you don't have that sanding dust on there, because then your glue is not going to want to stick because of that. Just wipe it off good. Let's get that sanding dust off the table also. Whenever you're sanding, you should wear a mask so that you don't get any of that in your lungs by breathing it in. Okay, so this side is still shiny, but I'm going to leave it that way. And then what you do is just take and what I do is I don't measure, but you can. And so I just kind of go in from the corner a little bit, punch a hole, and then come down here, kind of hope that it's about the same. There we go. And then in order to make sure that the front and the back are the same, then I hold it up here. And I just go ahead and I put the round part right in there, so that then I hold them together really well, and then I just line it up, make sure that I'm in that hole, and then just punch the back one. Now, if it gets stuck, this little lever on your punch, that is meant to push anything that's stuck off of your punch. So you just push down on that, and then that will remove it. So we've got that one. I'm going to hold it nice and tight. Not that way. There we go. Just going to go in there, line up my hole punch with the hole that's already there, so I'm not trying to punch through two. And there we go, and it's kind of stuck, so I'm just going to set it down there and use that to push it off. So there we go. So now we have a little tiny journal cover. Now, I didn't think about it. I could have bought binder rings for this week since we didn't buy anything at all, but I didn't think about that. But you can use those binder rings from the Dollar Tree to bind them together, or you can just bind them together with ribbon. And I like ribbon. I think ribbon looks very pretty. But let's go ahead and glue this to the front of here because I really do like that green. Ooh, maybe we'll do green on the back cover, and we'll do the little stripes on the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off about what I need. No point in putting glue where I don't need it. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to cut it just a little bit big so I don't have to, whenever I'm going to glue something onto something else, I don't normally cut it exactly the same size as I need it, because then when you go to put it on there, you have to get it in exactly that spot. So I cut it a little bit big and then cut around it when I'm done, and that way if I don't, if it's a little high, little low, little left or right, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to put this on the front cover here, and so that's one other thing you can do with your credit cards is use it as a glue spreader. It makes a really nice glue spreader. You're not getting the glue all over your fingers. And actually, I am going to, well, it doesn't matter. They're both the same size. I'm going to cut a piece of this off also, so that I can use any glue that might be left over when I go to spread the glue. So let's flip this one over. I'm going to glue to there. I'm going to glue to there. So then you can just take your glue and put it on there. I don't know how my glue wound up getting so thick. I'm going to take the top off. I probably left the top off at one point in time. Now that is way too much glue for those two pieces. Gonna give it a squeeze, stick it up there and kind of let it suck that glue right off the paper. There we go. That's probably close to enough. And so then I'm just going to take a flat edge of one of my cards and spread it around. I love glue spreaders. I use them a lot whenever I do wet glue because I don't like to get my finger, I mean, it doesn't bother me to get my fingers in it, but if I'm working with something that I've got to put the glue on it and then I've got to touch other papers and everything, you know, then it's just sticking. So I just love to do it this way. It gets it nice and flat so that you don't have like big lumps of glue underneath whatever you're gluing. And then also, after you've spread your glue on there and you've got that put together, then take one and just give it a push on there like that. Now actually, I have something underneath of here. I got one of the nicks from that card on there. So there we go. I'm going to put that down there and just use this to press it down. And when you're doing that, just make sure you don't get one that has like numbers or lifted up names or whatever really close to the edge, so that when you're kind of pressing it down, that doesn't grab onto your paper and make a hole or something. Alrighty. So then we'll just go ahead and I'm just going to do it this way. I really need to put some water in here. I've been saying that forever, but I still haven't done it. But it needs it. It's just too thick. And tacky glue is supposed to be thick, but this is just really thick. And I really do like, I do have something else that I use as a glue spreader, but this is what I always used to use before I got the other, and I really, really like it. I like doing that in order to. So let's press it down there and then turn it over and use another flat card to just press on it. Because remember, we've got that name right there too, so I have to remember that as I'm pressing so that I don't rip the paper. But sometimes if you just put glue like this, if you don't spread it out, when you put your paper on there, you kind of get lumps like that. And also, it doesn't necessarily stick down. And then you can press that glue out like that. But if you spread it nice and flat first, then you don't have to worry about that lump, and you don't have a whole ton of glue squashing out the edges. So there we go. That's done. Oh, and I could, if I wanted, I could wrap that over. Now, because I did not sand the other side, it won't necessarily stick really great, but I could do that. Of course, I need more glue because I let it dry. But yeah, you could fold that over like that, and then you can put another piece on the inside, but you don't have to worry about making it go to the edge. Trying to like cover a cover. Whenever you're going to fold a corner, before I folded that actually, let's do it right. Before you fold over, if you're going to fold over a piece like that, cut just outside of, don't cut right up to the edge of whatever you're cutting. Like a lot of times you're going to have a square point right there. You know, it's going to be a square piece of cardboard or something, but just cut just not quite to that point. And what that does is then that just makes that corner fold not be so bulky. and it folds nicer. Put some of this down here. And so yeah, you just do it like that. Oh, I cut it a little bit small because that's round instead of square. I should have thought about where would the point be if that was actually straight. And I should have cut it out just a little bit further than that. And again, like I said, I should have sanded this side. So if you want it to stick really well, you should sand that first. So just do it like that. And then because you've got, it doesn't matter if these are all the same or anything, because then you will cover it with a piece of paper that's just a little bit smaller. And then you don't have to worry about you're trying to get exactly to the edge of each, but you can see the side of the card, which, you know, might not make a difference because these are white, but, you know, like if you've got a piece of cardboard in there, you don't want that cardboard showing. So if you cut it just a little bit bigger and wrap it like that, and then you just take another piece of your paper and just cut it a little bit smaller than the actual card. So, and I'm doing this in a very odd way just because of, I've got glue right there, but I still want to make sure that it's in shot. All right, so I want to, if this is the edge, I want to go just inside that edge because what I folded over will cover. And hopefully this is straight. So you'll take that. Hey, I'm having a day today. Alrighty, so that's pretty good. I do want to tear off this little bit. Whenever you're tearing anything, no matter what, whether the piece you're keeping is the small piece or the big piece, always hold down the small piece and rip the big piece, or pull on the big piece. It's just so much easier to get a hold of than trying to get a hold of that little tiny piece and pull on it. So there we go. And then just put glue on that and put it right on the inside. See, now you didn't have to come all the way to the edges with your tear ruler. You have a really cute little edge there, and that covers up your inside to make a nice little inside of a book cover. So I'm not going to do this one. I'll just kind of fold it over so that we can just, well, we don't need to. We'll just do this one, because then what you're going to want to do is once you get it done, and if you put the back on it before you punch the front, you should punch the front first, and then you're going to have to, because you can still see the hole. So just go right in that hole. Can't find it. There we go. Go right in that hole and punch it. Because if you put the back on there before you punch the hole, then you're going to have to find the hole through. It's going to be covered. And you can massage it to find where the indentation is and then cut it. But it's just easier to do it like this. And then once you glue this on, then you'll go ahead and you'll have a hole on this side to use as your guide to punch the hole through the backing. And we're not going to bother doing that. But this would go here. And so then it's there and it's covering up the holes. If both sides were covering up the holes, then you could just massage it and massage it, because you know basically about where those holes are. Kind of figure out where that hole is at, and then put your paper punch up there and kind of hope you get it lined up right. But it's so much easier to just turn it over. You've already got that hole on that side, and just stick it in there and give it a punch. And now one of your covers is done. And then you do the other cover the same way. And then you just cut papers to fit inside. And again, just punch them the same way. Line them up. Give them a punch. I usually, when I make a cover, what we got on there. When I make a cover, I normally make my pages just a little bit smaller than my book. You want it to line up with your back spine, and I make it just a little bit shorter than the outside edge. And I don't know why, just because I guess really like when you have a book, the cover kind of sticks out around the edges. So I would just do it like that, and then see, it would line up with the back, and it's just a little bit shorter all the way around. And then you just go ahead and use this as your guide and punch your holes. Tie a piece of ribbon through there, tie it loosely so that it won't bind up when you're trying to open it, and you wind up with a really cute little book. So, book covers for nice little journals or whatever. You could use them to put pictures in. You know, you could use them to put plain white paper in and just use them to sketch in or keep lists for the grocery store or something. And then you can always, because you've tied it, you've either put a binder ring or tied it with ribbon. When it gets all full, and when you've torn all the pages out, if you use it like for lists, then you just go ahead and untie it, put a bunch more pages in there, and start all over again, because they're nice and solid, so they will hold up. And so that is what you can do with your credit cards. That's a few things. I'm sure that there are a million more, even probably things that I've done before that I just didn't think of this time. But I hope that that helps. Thank you for your request. Those of you that have requested things and I haven't got to them, I really do apologize. And I lose my lists all the time. I read my comments and I write it down on something and I think I'm gonna like put this somewhere, and then I lose it. So if you've requested something and I have not done it yet, please feel free to request it again. And like I said, I'm, you know, like sometimes if you request something, it comes out a lot later because I may be 3 or 4 weeks ahead. So by the time that I figure out how to do what you want and then actually get it recorded, it might be 5 weeks before I get it out there. But like right now, I'm working just a couple days ahead, so, you know, it could be quickly. But I really do appreciate each and every one of you. I really do appreciate your comments and your requests. So there's that one, and this is the tear ruler I just made as a sample myself. I did one with big nicks and one with little nicks. And again, we've got the little nicks and then we've got the wavy, and they do really cool effects. This is one of my favorite things to do with a credit card, is to use it as a background, because it just really is so quick and I think very effective. So here is one that I did. These are some samples, and so some of them, as you go, they're going to start. That's why you pick 2 colors that will go together, because once they start mixing, you know, by the time I got down to here, we were really getting mixed together, and you know, I got a really pretty green though. So you know, just remember that, make sure your colors go together if you're going to do that little trick. And I hope that if you play with these, you really have a good time. And again, this is something, it didn't cost us anything this week. We already had the paint, and, you know, we already had the punch. So it's just one of those things where it's really good to keep your little extra bits and see what you can do with them, because there really are a lot of different things that you can do with just waste. So thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. And I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.